Hi, my name is Dr. Mark McCullough with Next Level Health, and we're located in Battle Creek, Michigan. Well, I'm going to start way back to when I was going through my 4 years at Michigan State. I was originally went to Michigan State because I wanted to be a veterinarian, because I love animals. And as I was going through school, I got lambasted with real-life stuff. I mean, I've got a gift to use a photographic memory, but I didn't get prepared in high school to go out into Big Ten university kind of thing. And so I got hit with, grades. The grades weren't as good as they were supposed to be. And I had to work myself out of a hole for like the next 3.5 years in order to be able to do what I wanted to do. And the other thing is that I was really talented at a field that nobody else was that much, and it was chemistry, because I had a great chemistry teacher who was like MacGyver. And so it's hard to get good grades in chemistry and then go into professional school. It just is. So I got decent grades, but I didn't get the grades that it was going to take for me to go to the next level with that road that I was thinking of. Plus, in the process of getting my bachelor's degree, I really started being intrigued about drug interactions and how the biochemistry is involved and stuff. And not to a huge level, because my undergraduate degree isn't designed for that really, but I was a part of environmental pesticide research. I learned a lot about toxins and toxicity and how it was into fish and how it bioaccumulated into people when they consumed it. So I was starting to get this people thing going, and it started making me see that I have a passion for people. And I love animals, though, which means that I didn't want to have to be the one euthanizing those animals, because I know today, 20 years after I've graduated from undergraduate school, that I'm the biggest baby in our family. I mean, I cannot, it just pulls at my heartstrings to have to make decisions like that when it comes to the animals. So anyway, 2 days before I graduated from Michigan State in 1991 in December, my wife and I went out on a blind date. Okay, and I was rejected from tip to tail with no job. And we met, and I, from that point forward, don't know why I ever looked at another person in my life that I knew this is the one. She's the coolest thing, and she's the most beautiful thing. So all that to say is that we started our life together very fast. By the time April of '92 hit, we were engaged. I knew right away, but I got a job in the beginning or end of January of '92 to be able to afford sort of the ability to be able to ask her for her hand. So I asked her parents' permission and got her and she said yes. And then we went through the course of the summer and got married in September of '92. Well, the following year, we had Jake, and Jacob was 2 weeks overdue. He was 9.5 pounds. He had what was called meconium aspiration, which is when the baby takes their first bowel movement inside the womb, very toxic. And he came out and was in natal intensive care unit, but the night that he was, I remember laying with Missy, right after she had him, and the nurse came in and said, I don't know if he's going to make it through the night. And that's a real good way to start father and motherhood or parenthood. And so we immediately were, on pins and needles. And so over the course of the next, I'm going to say probably 9-10 months, he started walking at about 9 months, a little earlier than he was supposed to. But at about 10 or 11 months, he wasn't developing as well as he was supposed to. Missy noticed this more than me, and I call her modern day Mother Teresa. She knows, and she is just an awesome woman, but I just was in denial. When you're a parent and you just have a child and you really don't know what to do, there's no handbook on any specific child. We've read a whole bunch of them, but it's not for, Jake he has a book of his own, and Macy has a book of her own, and everybody has their own children, and they can have 5 of them, and they're all different books. Well, what we, as a parent, if there's an earache or a strep infection or something, you just take them to the doctor. It's the first thing you do. Because it's your responsibility to take care of that child, and you don't know any other way but that. Well, we kept taking him, and he had thrush, which is like an imbalance in your normal flora in your body, which when you take an antibiotic, the bacteria is all killed off, and then mold or the fungus rises up, and that's what that thrush is. He had it systemic through his system. Well, if anybody knows anything about that, if it goes systemic, it does all sorts of stuff to your brain, to your entire system systemically. It's horrific. Your body cannot function. It's in alert mode all the time. So he was always, for the first 11 months of his life, he didn't sleep through the night until the day before my daughter was born. And they're 10 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days apart. And I work second shift as a chemist, and so I get home at about 11:30, and I'd be up at 1, 3, 5, and 7 because Missy was pregnant with Macy. And so she was up, here and there, but she was exhausted because, who in their right mind is going to put their wife through having babies that close together? Well, I didn't mean to, but it just happened the way it did. So all that to say is that, he had 30 ear infections in like a few sets of tubes before he was 3.5 years old. And again, not developing the way he was supposed to. And we didn't know vaccination, we didn't know all that information like we do today, because when you have a child like this, you become a PhD in a child like that. And that's exactly what we did. And I'm going to say more Missy than myself, because when we ended up, there was a team of doctors, we finally took him to Michigan State, and when he was diagnosed with pervasive developmental disorder, and the group of doctors told us that he was going to be dependent on us for the rest of his life, and he was going to amount to be nothing but dependent on us. And then I remember her sitting next to me, and I didn't even know how to console her because I was numb myself. And she just was crying because she finally had gotten an answer, because she knew something was wrong. And sometimes it's always good to get an answer. To me, not so much. I don't like it. I'm like going, now we've got to do something. But she said, well, is he going to be able to go to prom? Because she already had thought, well, I'm not even worried about football or anything like that. And they just looked at her and they're like, oh no, he won't be able to do that. And so consequently, let's push forward up, to where 18 years is how old he is now, and he just recently at homecoming king, and he went to the dance, and he's going to be doing praise and worship and going to a leadership school over in Australia called Hillsong. And there's not very many kids that are actually not just recommended, but actually get accepted, especially right out of high school. And he's leaving like a month after he graduates. So it's just victories all over the place. So the good news is that he has parents that love him. And I know there's a lot of parents out there that love their kids as well. And you don't have to have autism, and you don't have to have the things, because really pull back to where, we went to chiropractic school because of the fact he was diagnosed with that. And I was working like 60 hours a week as a chemist, and I wasn't able to spend time with him, nor were the finances there to be able to house a child for the rest of his life. And that's what they told me, so I was like, I got to do something different. Little did I know that I spend more time doing what I do now, but I spend more quality time with my wife and my children because of what I do, because the passion that I have now is for people, and being a steward of my son is super important. My wife, obviously the most important thing on this earth. My kids, Jake and Macy, great, but when we get further out than that, we start looking at the community and practice members that come into this office. They're family. And I treat every middle-aged to beyond man or woman as my grandpa and grandma. I look at them like that because they need help, just like my family and myself needs help. And so when we went out to school, Jake was 4 when he had gotten the only state in the union that was actually funding any kind of help for kids that are diagnosed with autism. In Michigan, they wouldn't diagnose him with it. Well, they diagnosed him with it out in Iowa, at the University of Iowa. So we were able to get that diagnosis to be able to have OTs and PTs that happened to be all in that Quad City area where we went to school. I went to school at Palmer in Davenport, Iowa. It was a great area. We loved it. And Missy supervised all these kids that were students to come in and train Jake 30 hours a week on, because if anybody knows what autism is, it's basically a fractured brain. There's disconnects that there's ways he can do things better than anybody on the face of the planet, but and I'm talking about autistic kids. I'm not talking about Jake, but when you have fractured areas in the brain, what happens is they get overstimulated and they're unable to connect, and there's no way to deduce. And so instead of a child just holding on to a daddy's hand, walking down the mall and picking up stuff that they would pick up just by, this is the color purple, this is a light bulb, there's a blue ball over there, your name's Matthew. I mean, all these things, they don't do any of that. So he had to get trained from the ground up, every label that was in front of him, including mom and dad in pictures. So when he was 4.5, he finally said mom for the first time ever. About 5 years old, he said me, my name, Dad. And then he learned his ABCs, and about a year after that, he learned his colors, he learned everything. And by the time he was 8 years old, he was undiagnosed with autism. And he had mild mental retardation too. And so that right there was I didn't even need to walk away with a degree from chiropractic school to have gone out there for that reason alone. And then we actually got into church, and started serving, in a way that we'd never done before. I mean, God is good for doing what he did for Jake, but he's also good for doing what he did for my wife and I, because I was a 245-pound guy that didn't even have an idea about how to eat well. I knew what good and bad food was, but I wasn't paying attention to it. And I was on my way out. I really was. I was not healthy. And how can I be healthy to my wife and my kids if I'm really a great student in chiropractic school, but really not walking it out? So we got out of school, came back. He was undiagnosed just about the time we got back, a little bit after that, and then started out homeschooling, and then Missy did for a couple years, and then we ended up putting them into public schools. They went to Christian schools for a few years, and then now they're in the public schools since middle school, and they're both just doing really well. It's great that they're going through the things that they're going through in the public school system, because it's real world, and I want them to do it when they're underneath my roof, because we've got a relationship with these guys that they tell us everything. And I've got so many people that come into the office that say, it's so special to see you be able to say that you are so happy for your children and their juniors and seniors. And he said, most of them will say most kids are being tolerated at that age, and the parents are actually seeing where it's going to be a good time for them to get out of the house. We don't want them to leave. We know that they're supposed to. And so for that, it's been a phenomenal ride. I mean, there's all sorts of challenges, not just with the kids, but starting a practice and the whole thing. And the kids went out to school with my wife and I when they were 3 and 2. 9 out of 10 people get divorced, and you throw kids into the mix, and I think it's 10 out of 10. I think that's what they told us at the beginning. But the whole thing is that in that whole process, I've never grown closer to God today. My wife, I don't think in that whole period, if we would have stayed here in Battle Creek for the time and not gone away and just leaned on each other, there's no way it would have been able to happen. So being obedient into the move that we made to go to chiropractic school was a big deal. We spent about a year trying to figure out what we wanted to do, because honestly, I didn't want to go to chiropractic school. And I'll tell you the reason why. It's the same reason you might be going, well, he's a chiropractor. What does that have to do with health? I thought it was a crick in the neck. Well, I thought the same thing. And then the more I've learned, the more I've understood that, in life you've got to have relationships with people. I've got to have a good relationship with my wife in order to be able to have a good relationship with my family, because everybody knows if mom is not happy, nobody's happy, and I know the head of the home has to be able to take care of his woman. And so that's what I'm here to do. That's my job. But I want to do it. It's my responsibility, I should say. And so I love to do it. I desire to do it. But in chiropractic, the brain is the head, and the extension of the brain is the spinal cord, and every single one of your 75 trillion cells and organized groups of cells or organs have to have a relationship, a very, very efficient, close relationship with that brain. They have to together in order to be able to function as efficiently for as long as you're on this earth. And so dependent on whether or not that communication is good is how long you're going to be here, quality. I don't know if you're going to be dragged out an extra 10 or 15 years on drugs, medication, surgeries, whatever, but I want you to be as effective and efficient as you can, and that's what I'm doing. I'm walking that out as well. Since I've been doing what I've been doing since 2000, I've been in practice for 11 plus years now, I have come to a place where I'm in better shape than I've ever been. That doesn't mean I can always be in better shape, but I actually broke my neck and lower back twice before I was 19. Was told by a group of doctors that I'd be in a wheelchair by the time I was 30, And when I was 40, I did an Ironman triathlon over in Arizona. And not only did I do that, my close friend, Dr. Emmett, has done 5, and I've still done the fastest one out of us both. So just as an add in there, we have a little competition. We have fun with what we're doing. But also, you know, what that tells, I want that to be conveyed to you, is that I was telling Matthew that I didn't run until I was 30 unless I was chased. I found ways to enjoy the whole idea of health. It's an all-encompassing thing. Without health, we don't have anything. I want you to be as healthy as you can so you can be a ministry. And a ministry is like a cup that's overflowing. If you've got cracks in your cup, the cup will never fill all the way up. And when it's constantly leaking and you're continuing to pour out to people, you're getting drained. But the better that your cup is health-wise, if it's those cups, those fractures are all healed up and glued up, so then you're overflowing, then you can truly be, a positive influence in yourself, your family, everybody that you love in your community as well. And so that's what I'm looking for everybody to do. And you know, we're not in the same place. I wasn't where I'm at today 5 years ago, but I'm okay with helping people where they're at. I'm not into the Olympic athlete, although I've worked with them. I'm into the Olympic you and where you're at. And where you're at today in comparison to where you're at going forward, being a part of what we're doing in this office, which is comprehensively looking through, you know, what we can do to help you, that's going to do nothing but help you and everybody that you know around you. So I've actually put that into practice with my family. They've been my hardest patients, I'm here to tell you, but it's been worth every bit of time and effort that to be put into it. It was very, very scary. I mean, I remember when my sister was diagnosed, my mom was just bawling, and she's like, you know, she's going to lose a third of her life. That's what the statistics say. How could this happen to her, and all this kind of stuff. And so I've been around that, and it was very fear-based, and I was always very respectful but fearful of it as well. And so there's a handful of ways that you can get diabetes, though. And being a type 1 diabetic, diagnosed at like 38 years old, I now know that I used to be, when I was younger, I get real shaky, and I eat. And so I was actually hypoglycemic. Some of you out there can relate with that. Well, what I found was that I was producing too much insulin, or she was producing not enough. And so eventually I burnt out my pancreas, and being that I'm a very, very intense individual and have a hard head and don't sometimes know when to quit doing something, and my wife, if she watches this, is going to laugh when I say that, but it's the truth. I've learned that I do have limits, and so does everybody out there. However, I don't like people defining mine, and I certainly would never define yours. And so with me and I actually I was with people, adjusting people one day, and there was just hundreds of people coming in that day. It was a very, very busy day, and I'd gotten to the point where I had lost about 20 pounds. Here I am serving people, helping people with their own nutrition, and my face is gray as gray can be, and the whites of my eyes were blood red. And finally my administrator came up and said, "We're going to the hospital." I went to the hospital. I actually didn't go to the hospital right away. I got my own, because this is, again, take your health, take it back, you know, be the one that's in charge of your health. I was being stubborn. Okay, you need some accountability and coaching and being healthy, and I'm here to tell you, I'm here to help you do this. I've been through a lot of things in my short lifespan here up to this point, but I'm here to tell you I've been through a lot. I got my own blood sugar meter, and I started testing my own blood, and if you test the meter, there's a control that you have to do to make sure that it's working. And so I did it, and the control said 86, which is right where I'd like to have my blood sugar at. And I poked my finger, and it showed error. Okay, I thought maybe I didn't do it right. I did it again, error. And then I read in the manual that it doesn't go any higher than 799, which is about 10 times higher than you want your blood sugar. Well, then I started getting concerned. And so I went Then finally I went to, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but I went to the doctor and my blood sugar was 1200. And they looked at me and said, well, first of all, you're diabetic. And I said, no, I'm not. And then they said, you should be dead or in a coma. And I said, well, I'm not. What are we going to do about it? And he says, well, you can start eating a certain way. So I did to an extreme. And within 3 months, my blood sugar was down to in the normal range. The problem with that is that I was working out 3 times a day to keep it down because I didn't have any insulin function that was keeping up with just the ebbs and flows of normal, metabolic physiology. So the more I learned, the more I finally, after a year, and my wife tells me later that she actually had my funeral set up because I was so stubborn. But when I finally succumbed to taking some insulin is when I started going, okay, instead of feeling sorry for myself and stop being a martyr, I can start helping people with things like this, whether it be type 2, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, or type 1. So I decided to put on a different hat and start serving that to that aptitude or whatever, to that level. And I actually was asked to be, after I had started training a little bit and adding some more races like half Ironmans and marathons and half marathons to my portfolio because I love to do that kind of stuff. Because for one thing, don't ever have to take insulin when I'm doing it. And I've eaten to a point where it's pretty awesome to be able to do those things when most associations that have to do with diabetes will tell you don't do any of that. Well, I just did a 35-mile race about a month ago, an ultra marathon, and I didn't use any insulin the whole time because I was active the whole time, but I knew how to do the nutrition. I'm learning as we go along. I'm sort of the guinea pig, but it's really not a guinea pig thing because it is what it is. So what I did was I got invited in 2009 to join a group called Triabetes, and it's an organization very proactive to help people be active and be diabetic. And what I found out was as I started doing this, I started sharing with some of the things that I was doing with the people in the practice, and they went from taking all sorts of different insulin sensitizing drugs for type 2 and insulin to not having to take any of it. And they had to eat a little bit different, but was that worth it to them? 100%. I mean, they were just like lights on. I am not diabetic. Well, sometimes you can say you're not diabetic, but sometimes what that says is, well, I can go ahead and eat whatever I want now that I'm not diabetic. But what we have to do is we have to be a steward of understanding that what you put in your body has got to be transferred to fuel. And if you are messing around with all those metabolic organs too much, you have to have an understanding about that. And without going into PhD details, I usually try to bring it down into when I can understand it, which is like between 2nd and 3rd grade. And so if I can understand it in 2nd, 3rd grade, then I can convey it to people that probably know it at a higher level than that, but it'll still give them the ability to be able to understand. So then they have the power and the knowledge, and they can actually go forward and live their life that way. And I help them be accountable. And there are some supplements that you can take as well. But all that to say is that it's been a really, really, it's a thorn in my side. I mean, that's not a pun intended because I don't use a pump. I'm actually using injections for me because I don't hardly use any insulin because of the fact that I try to live as clean of a life as I can, and I'm relatively active too. And so with that being said, sometimes people are going to take a little bit more insulin, but they're going to know how to take it, and they're going to know that it's not a bad thing, but you don't have to live a life of sedation. You don't have to live a life of fear. You don't have to live any of those things. And so, I'm actually currently nominated, and I'll find out this month if I'm going to be on Team Type 1, which is a global group of Type 1 diabetics. It's a racing team, actually, which I'm going to be able to not only be an advocate out in the community like I am right now, I'm already doing that, so it's not like I'm holding back and waiting for a title, because if you come into this office and understand how I work, is there's no titles, because then there's no entitlement. I am a doctor, but the only thing doctor means is to teach. And so what I'm to do is to teach you everything that I know, because if I know more than you, what's the use of that knowledge even being inside my head if I can't convey it all to you, because that's what I'm learning it for. And so I can't wait for that opportunity, as well as all the other ones that are out there too. So it's been an incredible journey. A lot of challenges in the way, but I know that I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for all the challenges that I've been through. And so, we can get on the top of the mountain together and shout and be excited about it, but we may also hit a few valleys here and there. I'm not an idealist at all. I'm a very real person. When it comes to your health, I'm going to tell you whether I can help you or I can't. I'm going to tell you structurally from a chiropractic standpoint if I can help you or I can't. All the different things that go along with it, the lifestyle issues, the factors that go into your health, I'm straight up and I'll accept you where you're at, but I'm always going to be the one that's going to put a little bit of a push to you because you wouldn't have it any other way.